Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode.
In today's episode, in Team Season Preview 16 out of 32, I was joined by Dolphins fans Mark Bradley and Sam Moores as we preview the team's upcoming season. Mark discusses the return of Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Slightly caveated with providing he does actually want to be here.
Sam discusses Tua's comments on Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, the fact that they're not downplaying this beef, I think, is a good thing.
And the three of us predict the team's overall record in our win-loss-tie segment. Hope you all enjoy.
Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and today we're doing another team's season preview. And the team today is my team, the Miami Dolphins. And with me, I've got two returning guests who are both on for last year's season preview. With me today, first of all, is Sam Moores. Sam, how are you? How are things?
I'm great, mate. I'm great. Yeah, I'm just buzzing for the season to start. Really, it's training camp started this week for all teams, and it's starting to really hit that the season is around the corner, and I can't wait because it's gonna be a bit of a weird one for Miami, which I'll talk about later on, of course. But yeah, great to be on again.
Well, our other guest on, returning guest, came on for last year's season preview as well. Back with us on the show is my former Fins UK podcast co-host, it's Mark Bradley. Mark, how are you? How are things? Long time no see.
I know, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm good. Same as Sam, very much looking forward to the start of the season. It's the summer months can after the draft finishes and everything else like that, it's a bit like a long drag till we get to this point. But happy that everything's ramping up and looking forward to another no doubt eventful and interesting Dolphins season.
Yeah, I think, Sam, you hit the nail on the head in terms of the kind of the moment it hits you that when you see them where they're all returning to the practice facility, they're all getting out of their cars or they're walking into the facility and they'll be welcomed back. And it does hit you that, it's about to hit the fan. Things are about to get real. And I think in terms of the season, I think we'll get onto our thoughts later on. I'm not sure how the season will go, but I think, just when our first week hits again, the first game at Hard Rock, I think it will really hit us then that actually, football is back. So let's head into the main ins and outs of the season. So including re-signings, Dolphins brought in Bradley Chubb back in, as well as Liam Eichenberg, as well as signing players such as Alexander Mattison, Zach Wilson, and Nick Westbrook-Akine, amongst others. And the main outs include the likes of Durham Smythe, Anthony Walker, Calais Campbell, Kendall Lamb, Javon Holland, Emmanuel Ogba, Raheem Mostert, a personal disappointing loss of mine, as well as Duran Neal and Braxton Berrios. And in the draft, we took Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle, 13th overall, Jonah Savannah, guard, 37th overall, as well as Jordan Phillips, DT, 143rd overall, as well as Jason Marshall Jr., Dante Trader, Ollie Gordon second, Quinn Ewers, and Zeke Biggers. Now, Sam, with you first, your thoughts on the overall off-season for our team?
Yeah, it's a weird one. Like it's I think it's the sensible off-season. I think there's no expectation this season really because of the way of how the roster was shaped before and how terribly it was shaped before. So with the fact that there was no real expectation of me because it's a sort of mini rebuild year, I think it's sensible. A quiet free agency for once, which again I think was very sensible. And I do like some of the players drafted. Going on the both lines, the first two picks was again very smart, and then obviously we have the recent trade as well, which I think getting something out of the Jalen Ramsey situation in Minkah Fitzpatrick. It's a shame to lose Johnny Smith, of course, but for someone who looked like you might have let him go for nothing, just getting someone back was huge, I think, for me as well.
Yeah, you can tell I made my notes for this episode before that trade went down because I forgot to actually update the notes. There was a trade that went on very recently that saw Minkah Fitzpatrick return to the team, Jalen Ramsey go the other way, as well as Johnny Smith both him and Ramsey going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we got a draft pick as a result. And on top of my head, I've forgotten which round it was, but it wasn't.
I think it was the fifth.
Yeah. So it wasn't exactly a great haul, but I think Mark. I mean, I'm sure we talked about before about the loss of Fitzpatrick and how good he was in that 1 year for us. In terms of that, I mean, obviously Ramsey, sad to see him go personally, because I thought he was a good servant to the team. I thought he had his moments, and obviously he wasn't the player maybe he was at LA or particularly Jacksonville. But I think he was a good servant, and Johnny Smith had a really good, particularly second half of the season. I felt like we had a brief couple of years tight end lull where we hadn't really had anyone since Gesicki left to even make any splash plays. Julian Hill was the guy we used sometimes, but he wasn't. One of the worst things I've seen in the Dolphins jersey was Julian Hill, and now we're getting a tight end like Johnny Smith in, who did really well. And I was underwhelmed by the OBJ signing, but Johnny Smith made up for that massively with, I thought, a really good season, particularly down the stretch. But then there was a talk about him wanting to leave and wanting to trade away, and then that went quiet for a bit, and then suddenly out of nowhere, get this weird day where it was, first thing seeing, the Steelers are, trading for Jalen Ramsey, and then next thing you know, I was in work at the time and I was getting notifications on my phone whilst at work, and next thing you know, I was seeing him in work half an hour later. The Steelers are now giving away Fitzpatrick to the Dolphins, and then hour passes, and then they announced that Johnny Smith is going to the Steelers. So a bit of a frantic day for Dolphins and Steelers fans, but I think that's the one disappointment, because Darren Waller has come in as well, out of retirement to join the team. And what was your thoughts on that? Because I felt like, would I rather Darren Waller and Fitzpatrick, or would I rather Jalen Ramsey and Johnny Smith? I would take the latter, even though I would probably rather Fitzpatrick than Ramsey in terms of age. But certainly, I would much rather Johnny Smith than Darren Waller.
I think the thing with that trade, I mean, I think we've all probably given Chris Greer a bit of a hammering over here for his for some of the moves that he's made, but I don't think any of us really expected to get anything for Ramsey. He obviously didn't want to stay. He was obviously kind of looking to move on, and have to say a bit underwhelmed with his performances while he's been here. I mean, obviously he clearly is a quality player, but I didn't think, especially last season, I didn't think he kind of really did enough. Possibly because he was probably thinking about a trade probably way before it actually came out. So to get anything out of that deal, I think is good. Getting Minka is, I think, an excellent bit of business. Slightly caveated with providing he does actually want to be here. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of you were mentioning there about social media and everybody kind of coming in from their cars and coming into training, and it kind of gets you going. Apparently not if you're Minka Fitzpatrick, because nobody's seen anything of him. He's there, he's training, he's obviously doing his work, but no Dolphins social media on kind of him coming in, or we've not heard from him or anything else like that. Mike McDaniel obviously kind of said that he couldn't wait to get the 29 jersey back on, which is obviously which is good to hear if true. But it is a little bit worrying that we've not heard from him. But in terms of the deal, I think the Dolphins did really well. Again, like you, a little bit sad to see Johnny Smith go. I think he's the first tight end that I've probably really enjoyed as kind of having since Mike Gesicki, who I was a big fan of. But like Gesicki, very much a receiving tight end, not the blocking tight end. And I guess we could argue all day about kind of, is that another look to the running game that obviously was so poor last year, that actually we can get Jonnu out, get Nick Westbrook-Akine in, who's a much better blocker, who could take some of those reps that Waller had, that Jonnu had, probably provide the same level of receiving talent, a bit better blocking, increase the run game. And I think they've really looked at the running game over the summer. I think we'll probably come on to that a little bit later when we're kind of talking about how we're feeling about the season. But I think the moves were done with that in mind. Darren Waller, I like Darren Waller. I think he's he's an experienced guy. Obviously, kind of, you always kind of worry a little bit with us kind of bringing in the old brigade. But you look at Calais Campbell last year, we were all kind of a little bit like, but he's a guy with massive experience. He came in as somebody who'd kind of been through the mill a little bit and kind of obviously massively helped the team as much as he could in terms of the difficult culture, did we say, that we had last year, which again there seems to have been a lot of work done. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty pleased with that. And in terms of the rest of the stuff, as I said, I think Kenneth Grant's going to be a great signing. I kind of had the little the video of him chasing down the wide receiver on repeat after we kind of drafted him and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think, like Sam said, we had a relatively quiet off season. James Daniels, I think, is a really, really good acquisition on the O line, provided he gets back to fitness. But yeah, I think it was hopefully a quietly effective off season for a change, rather than perhaps a splashy, ineffective off season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the losses we had this off season are probably less, I think, damaging maybe last year when we lost the likes of Christian Wilkins, Van Ginkel, and I say this, Wilkins going last year, but
get him back now.
Literally, the day of recording today, which is July 25th, the Raiders have cut Christian Wilkins. Now, it's due to how they've not been a big fan of how he's done his rehab or something like that. There's been a bit of a reasoning there. So obviously, if he is injured, then obviously he might have to wait a bit to see him play. But
yeah,
I think
serious foot injury from last year. I think he only played 5 games last year, and yeah, the rehab. I think with how serious it is, he's sort of gone for an unorthodox method, and it sounds like they're gonna have like a dispute. The sort of Raiders avoided his money. They're gonna have a dispute. It's he's obviously appealed that with the NFLPA. It sounds like he's probably going to get his money back, which would then allow him to sign for a team for cheaper because he's making his money back. But we'll see with that. But obviously with the foot injury and everything, is you're basically taking a gamble. But again, if he does win his dispute and he gets his money back, then pretty much any contender will be after him. So I feel like he'd probably sign there more than Miami. But of course, there's a chance.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get him, then it's an amazing deal, because you sort of take a chance. But if you're going to take a chance on anyone, it's a guy who's already played for the team. He knows McDaniel's system. He knows the team. He knows most of his teammates that will be there if he joins back. And he, obviously recency bias is a big massive thing in all sports. Let's not forget, in 2023, he had a really good year for the Dolphins. So I think put him back there, and you have you've got Zach Sealer there. If they come back healthy, Jaden Phillips, Bradley Chubb, you can get back to that defense that can cause teams problems, and did cause team problems at times on that defensive front in 2023 and 2022, which got us into the playoffs. So yeah. I'm not against it, especially if it's on a cheap deal. I wouldn't want to have him on the money he got from the Raiders, that deal he left for. Certainly, as a cheaper deal, I think it's I don't know, $20 million a year, for example. Let's say as a hypothetical figure. I'm not against to come back for that reason, and I think that would be a risk, even just a 1-year deal, 20 million, maybe 2-year deal. I'm not against that, but I want to touch on one of the guys before we go into our first talking point. One guy that I love the addition of is Nick Westbrook-Keeney, because he's a guy that I always thought was really underrated. As a guy, he was never really the number one. He was always a second or third choice receiver. I always felt like you always saw him making an impact. We getting touchdowns here and there. I mean, his stats before the season, are okay, but not bad for a third choice receiver. He got like 476 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2021, 397 and 3 touchdowns in 2022, 370 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2023. But in 2024, it was 497 yards and 9 touchdowns, which I think is, if you're getting a guy who's had his best season to date, comes to the team now, of course, a lot of players on contract years can often play better in their final year, and then when they get their money, they do sort of disintegrate and not play as well. But what I've seen from watching Westbrook-Keeney in the last years in the NFL, he's a fighter. He's probably like signing a Julian Edelman from Wish. He's not the same level as Edelman, but he's that same kind of player in terms of that fighter mentality, small guy, works with extra yards. And I think what I've seen from him, he strikes him as a good work ethic kind of person. And I don't see him as a guy who's going to down tools. So I think you have him there as that third choice, which I was hoping would be OBJ last year. I was hoping that he would be that third choice, have an alternative option, then just Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So I think Westbrook Kine could be a really, really good addition.
Yeah. I think the good thing about him that you've got as well is he's something a little bit different. 6'2", 211.
Red zone target.
I think six of those touchdowns were red zone touchdowns. Although I must admit, I was quite surprised to see. I think the other two were kind of sort of big deep routes that he got on the end of as well. So he's not, he's no slouch either, which is good. And we all know that, obviously kind of we love the speed in Miami, but to have something a little bit different, I think you're right. I think he could be one of those players that kind of slips under the radar a little bit, but come the end of the season, we might be saying perhaps a bit like Johnny Smith, kind of was last year. I don't think any of us kind of expected the season that we got out of Johnny, but I think he might be a similar sort of vein. So I would definitely agree with
that. Let's take this offense because I want to talk about one sort of part of the offense that's been sort of having a headline news, as it often does with this player, Tyreek Hill. And two have been causing headlines in recent days. Of course, we all remember what happened in the Jets game where Tyreek Hill basically publicly said he wanted to leave the franchise, was saying he was done and he wanted to go to a competitor. And then it all went quiet. And I think I was saying, I don't know about you two, but I was expecting a trade. I was expecting him to get traded or his contract to be released. But he's gone out since, and he's gone out and apologized for this. And I forget who the media guy was who called him out for it in front of his face, basically said that's not what a leader does. So there's a lot of rebuilding to it. In the last 2 days in training camp has alluded to this, the fact that Tyreek Hill is rebuilding with his teammates now. Some teammates have gone out and been a bit less publicly upfront about it, and some people have been a bit more lax about it and been fine with it. But Tua Tagovailoa has been vocal about it and his sort of views on Tyreek Hill. And I want to get the quote that he made in an interview in a sort of media circle. He said, "When you say like that, you don't just come back with my bad. You've got to work on that relationship. He's working on himself." So I think personally, this might be a story out of nothing. I think that I think he'll once they start playing together more and more, once the next few weeks build up, I think they'll be absolutely fine. I think they will be back to what they were. But Tyreek Hill spoke a lot about that, but it wasn't his best year in 2024. There was a few fumbles. Had a few injury problems, and also then seeing you publicly quit on the team in that game against the Jets. So, what kind of? First, I want to get your thoughts on the actual Tyreek Hill and Tua stuff, but just in terms of what he's expecting out of Tyreek Hill, because he's been a brilliant player for the Dolphins, but every player has father time, and this could be it for Tyreek Hill.
I don't think. I mean, personally, I wasn't surprised by what he said at the end of the year. Just not based on because of who Tyreek is more than anything. He's a diva. You can say that because that's what he is. And there's good things about it, there's bad things about it. It's just who Tyreek Hill is. There are good things, but don't get me wrong. It's having a diva sometimes, and it's great. And that at the end of the year, worst year of his career, season he's been battling through injuries. That was like the perfect time for him to express his frustration, and that's I don't blame him for that. It's the way he just flicked up. He was like, "Oh, okay, I'll try and put a statement out here," and that's because, that's just because he's Tyreek Hill. And that's because I often say with Tyreek, you take what he says with a pinch of salt. Really, a lot of the time, what he's saying is not what he means, and so I wasn't too bothered by it really compared to other people. But obviously, when you say it, it will upset the dynamics, and it does sound like they're trying to rebuild that relationship. But what annoys me more about Tyreek is his absence in like the big games. He just in those big games the last couple of years, he's not been the same receiver by any means. 6 p.m. window, playing against like the Jags or something, that's where he shines. But in those big games in the cold and at prime time, he's not been a game changing player that he should have been. When the lights are shining brightest, and you sometimes even forget he's a Dolphin in those games. And a lot of the time he was injured last year, and he obviously had the hand and he had the situation with the police before the game in week 1 against Jacksonville. But it's weird. Like for him, I'm not surprised that Tyreek's done anything. I never thought Tyreek was going. To be honest with you, I think he's the way it is again because a lot of the time I take what he says with a pinch of salt. I don't really look that much into it in the first place, and also the value he has compared to the value you get for him if you trade him away because of the contract is much more beneficial, especially if two guys who are fighting for their jobs in McDaniel and Greer, who I'm sure we'll talk about it later on. I personally think I never thought he was going. It was just about basically just I always said take it with a pinch of salt, and I think in terms of Tua's comments, it is nice to know that there is a real sense of leadership coming from him now. Which is something we've waited to see for a while. We've waited to see that for a while. He's always been a bit honest in his interviews. Rich Eisen's got this whole salty Tua thing because a lot of the time he says what's on his. He says what's on his mind and everything. But it's nice to see that him coming as a leader because, and it's the same not just with him, but after the reports the last couple of years of the coaches being so soft and the fact that they're not downplaying this beef, I think is a good thing because it shows a little bit of a culture change, which is what they really wanted, and that's what they said they were going to do last year. They didn't do last year. I think this year it might actually be happening.
Yeah, I agree, Sam. I think kind of on my notes that I'd kind of made specifically around this was the fact that, like you, I think when Tyreek talked, you kind of go, Tyreek's off again. Don't get me wrong. I think the Dolphins have to take a little bit of responsibility, knowing who Tyreek is, to put him in that position after the last game of the season, in the worst season he's had. He's played all year with a fractured wrist. They clearly must have known. So to send him out in front of the media, I think was a very silly move, and they could have, who on earth would have predicted he might have said something controversial? But so I think they have to take a little bit of that. So I think, like you say, I think a lot of the guys were probably a bit like, well, we don't really like that, but come on, it's Tyreek, But what I do like is exactly what you said, Sam. I like that Tua has basically come out and said, you can't just on this one, Tyreek, you can't just come out and go, no, I'm sorry, I was just spouting off like I normally do. It's all hot air like it normally is. Tua said no. We appreciate that he's said the words. We appreciate that he does appear to be kind of putting the effort in training, and he's presumably showing up on time. If he was the one who wasn't showing up on time, chances are. But if he's doing all of that and he's kind of, his actions speak louder than words, and he's obviously kind of putting that effort in. But fair play to Tua. I'm a Tua fan anyway, but fair play to Tua for kind of coming in and saying, okay, Tyreek, we appreciate your apology, but actually that's not really good enough. You've got to learn from your mistake. You've got to keep your mouth shut, and you've got to work hard and prove to us that you do want to be here. That last year was a fluke. It was because of the hand. It was because of the police. It was because of your house burning down or your domestic problems and everything else like that. But you focus this year, because there's no doubting that a fully focused, fully fit, fully functioning Tyreek, again, as you said, sir, is worth way more than anything we'd have got in the trade. But he's got to be on form. But I do think, like you say, with Waddle apparently was playing lights out in training the other day. They've got Westbrook Akine. Malik Washington's going to be looking to progress from last year. A couple of other undrafted free agents that they signed in terms of the wide receiver core look pretty tasty, or could be tasty. So there is a pressure on him to perform, because otherwise he is going to be out. I think it's his last year with guaranteed money this year as well. I think after this year he's we can get rid of him
the only time he goes this year is if the Dolphins are, say, 3-7, 3-6 at the trade deadline, and that McDaniel might even be gone, then Greer might secretly be out the door then as well. That's the only reason that Tyreek Hill will leave the Dolphins if the Dolphins season's over at the trade deadline, because because there's not much of the contract left. That's it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I think the good thing with say with Tua, and again we'll probably talk about McDaniel and everything, but this culture change that obviously they've spoken about. I did think it was quite interesting. I think it was today or yesterday. Jordan Brooks kind of came out and was one of the players that you're probably alluding to there, Andy, that kind of said, "Oh, it's not really as bad as everybody's making out," and kind of with all kind of thing. Unusually for Jordan Brooks, because he was the guy that last year was more than happy to come out and say, "Yes, this soft label that we've got is fair." He seemed quite outspoken last year. So whether he's been told to perhaps tone it down a little bit and be a little bit more reconciliatory with his comments, but we'll see. But I've got no problem with people keeping each other accountable. I think that's what we need to do. I don't think we did enough of that last year. I think that was a big.
Also, I was going to say as well, like you got guys now that want to be there. Like Jalen Ramsey didn't want to be there. We know the relationship with Mike McDaniel broke down probably last year. Javon Holland does not want to be there for a couple of years as well. Again, the relationship there. If you can get rid of, I think it's about claiming that culture from within. I think actually this season Calais Campbell would have been great because of that. So I feel like he kind of came a year too early, but now where the leaders and the star players are, Toronto has gone, but now it's Tua. He is the leader. It's Jalen Waddle. It's Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. These guys are the leaders now, rather than Jalen Ramsey's. Who was he really a leader when he was? That kind of thing.
Yeah, Zach Sealer as well.
Zach Sealer is a perfect example. Although he, when he gets his contract, then we'll probably see. I think
they should use bringing Wilkins back as a tool to make him stay. Is it salt and pepper? He called it on Hard Knocks that they were. He should use. So we'll get Wilkins back if you sign your contract, we'll get him back. Get the band back together, as it were.
I think they'll get that done. They normally tend to get a deal done the week before the season starts. It's normally when the Dolphins tend to do their deals. I think,
and then they need to.
They'll get that done because also if they do it now, they'll be able to get him for a pretty good price. And if you let him test the free agency, I don't think you can be able to afford him.
Zach Sealer for me was someone I'd be really unhappy to see go because I think Zach Sealer is really underrated. I think he's really good, and I think that I've grown to love him more and more. Especially the last year or two, I've really grown to love Zach Sealer. For me, it'd be a shame to lose him after all he haven't lost. Likes of Van Ginkel, the likes of Wilkins, the pass, and even someone I loved who he wasn't a star, but Emmanuel Ogbo I thought was really good, a really good worker for the team, and even like Trot Robinson, I thought had a really good first year. He was one of the Rookies of the Year contenders. Don't know whether it was Rookie or Defensive Rookie of the Year, but either way, he was up for one of the awards, and I think that he is a star that is rising. And I'm hoping Kenneth Grant can sort of be that guy that can add to that sort of young core and make.
He's a character as well, by the way. Kenneth Grant, as a human, that's the kind of person you want to draft as well in terms of characters.
Definitely. Still hurts about Van Ginkel, Andy. Don't mention
it. Well, I remember when the moment he scored that pick six in London, I got a WhatsApp text from Mark talking about Van Ginkel. So I think if you heard our podcast we had for a year or two with me and Mark, it was Van Ginkel was often him and Patrick Paul were often the names you love to talk about.
Definitely. Big season for Patrick Paul this year. Big season.
I think with obviously Terran Armstead, we didn't mention before as well, but Terran Armstead retiring. So he's now going to have to step up, and hopefully he can make that adjustment. And someone who may not be there next year is potentially our head coach, Mike McDaniel. We've talked about it and alluded to it so far this episode. There's increasing media discussion about sort of coaches on the hot seat, and McDaniel is being seen as that. Now, it seems crazy considering he got to playoffs in his first two seasons as a head coach in general, not just Dolphins head coach. The last season was a disappointment. I mean, Dolphins went 8-9 in 2024. We all combined said 12-5. I mean, that's how confident we were of a good season. I went for the Dolphins winning the AFC East in our predictions episode with Luke and Steve prior to the season beginning. I felt like it was finally the year where we'd see it was finally the year where we would see our team win a playoff game. I mean, for me and Sam, it'd be the first in our lifetimes. Not as much for you, Mark, unfortunately. But
all right.
But yeah, I think we were all hoping after what happened last year, how good we were. Well, the first 2 years in McDaniel's era, the Dolphins, we had a lot of hope, and it wasn't the season we hoped for. And I think I think the week game in New York was sort of, I think, almost defined it a little bit because we were we were competitive for a little bit of that game, and as soon as the Broncos went, what was 28-0 up against the Chiefs in that game, the Dolphins just immediately just collapsed, and I think that to finish 8-9 when you had so much hope, and the injuries were there, but a lot of players were still there for a lot of the year. Tyreek Hill played for a lot of the game still, and Tua was down. I think Tua injury was the ultimate killer, because I think we saw how better we played when he was on the field after the Cardinals game. And
we mentioned it in the last podcast we did, Andy. I was saying it was the best play of his career in terms of extending plays and everything. I think it was, in terms of EPA last year, that stretch between the Cardinals game and the obviously the Houston game, and then they played all right in the Niners game after that. But that was the best spell of his career in terms of adding to the team, in terms of his the points added, in terms of I mentioned Tua being a leader. That was the best spell of Tua, really doing it by himself, and I'll go into that a little bit in a minute. But I think last year was, in terms of Tua as a quarterback growth wise, we saw some really good things. It's just a shame the rest of the offense sucked, really.
Yeah, but this has sort of led to McDaniel talk, and I think let's not forget, I know the relationship was better with the players than it was with Flores, but Flores got fired after 3 straight winning seasons, and 2 of them were double-digit wins, if I'm right in saying this, but we didn't make the playoffs in any of those, so that's probably why he went. But McDaniel is getting more and more heat, and I don't think personally he should be fired, but if he finished 9-8, 8-9, but if it turns like a 6-win season, I think then you would then start to think, maybe it is time to see him go. Because you think about McDaniel's time at the Dolphins, and it has been good playoff seasons, but you think about when it's got to those big games and the big moments and the playoff games themselves, it hasn't been great in the big games. And every season he's been there, since he made the playoffs, we crumbled and should have really won back our AFC East if we were able to hold on to the leads and hold on to the division. So, Sam, what's your take on McDaniel stuff? And do you think he's on the hot seat if we have another 8-9, 7-10 season?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I'm hardly surprised that he's getting the media criticism, because when the media members truly watch the Dolphins, it's either in prime time or in a crunch game towards the end of the season, and that's where the Dolphins are not great. 9 times out of 10 in those scenarios, he's being outcoached. It may not be scheme, it may just be the little things like short yardage and stuff like that, or timeouts, or even the amount of pointless challenges that he's had. He just thought, okay, I'm gonna challenge that, and lots of timeout, and it's been costly at the end of the game. All those games in those scenarios, he's been outcoached. Like, the first year the offense was great. There were 5 straight losses to finish the year, but if you look at it, I'd say he was only outcoached in the Niners and Chargers games. The Bills game in the snow, the offense played really well, and then when the snow came down, Buffalo had a really long drive and won that game. The Dolphins, played very well in that game in the snow in Buffalo. The Patriots game, they were missing Tua because he went down in the Green Bay game. And again, Green Bay game had a big lead, then Tua got the concussion. So realistically, that season in 2022, very, very, very good year. We came into the second year. We had some new things on offense to keep it fresh. You had the motions and everything, and it took the lead by storm. We were leading the division. If we would have won that game against the Titans towards the end of the season, we would have won the AFC East. Whatever happened the rest of the season, we didn't win that game, and then the Bills pinned us to the post right at the end. But yeah, and in those games, in the end, he would abandon the run game. We saw that in the Buffalo game at the end of that season. The run game would be abandoned. Obviously, Raheem Mostert was running so well in that game. And if teams don't respect your run game, you're going to get 2 high safeties, and that's the so if the Dolphins' offense doesn't have a run game, you're going to get. There's no run game to really worry about. You're going to get 2 high safeties, and that's where the passing game doesn't open up as well, and that's when the Dolphins' offense is broken. And teams knew that heading into last year, because he changed something about the offense every year. We thought, they'll be fine, but nothing changed about the offense going into last year, and that was the issue with the Dolphins' offense last year. Because then teams realised that's how you stop Miami, and the offensive line wasn't great. Obviously, injuries, losing Austin Jackson was huge. The run game tanked when Austin Jackson went down. Armstead was injured like he always was. And then because of that, the offense just wasn't very good last year, and he was viewed as like an innovative play caller, but he couldn't put together an offense without Tua. Those games without Tua, they were the worst offense in the entire NFL. And then with Tua, they were limited because Austin Jackson was injured and they couldn't find a run game to open things up. And then you get the two high safeties, and then Tyreek Hill was not great. And obviously when he was hurt, so there's a big reason for that. And he needs to adjust because nothing's going to change because teams know how to play the Dolphins now. The run game is so crucial for this offense because then it opens up everything else. And I mentioned it earlier. Like Tua was forced to create on his own a lot of the time. His EPO numbers, I think it was only Jared Goff had a better success rate, which is like 60% of the yards on first down, 40% on first down, 60% on second down, and third down and fourth down conversions. And Tua was money on third down and fourth down, really. And so he had a great year in that. Tua kind of saved this offense from being terrible throughout the year. Really, if you look at the numbers, and that's why I'm a little bit out on McDaniel, to be honest with you. So it is a massive year for him. I don't even think it's about the wins. You mentioned it there, Andy. I think it's about the big games. Like say Miami win 8-9 games, but beat Buffalo towards the end of the season. Have some beat games in that scenario. Maybe New England are going for a playoff berth, and then you beat them in that game. That kind of thing, right? Those games, all these division games and the big games. There's a couple towards the end of the season. Those games, I think he'll be judged on more than the wins. Because it is a younger team, it's about getting younger this year. If there's something to build into next year, then fine. But that's what it's more about for me. But if it's more of the same, if the offense can't be fixed, if he doesn't adjust, and you're losing in big games again, that's where I'm. It's time to go. And Chris Greer I don't know how I feel about him because I feel like he has. There are some positions he's ignored, but he has defensive backs, for example, he's brilliant at finding things like that. And a bit of a weird one with Chris Greer. I feel like, I think this offseason has been a very good offseason for Chris Greer. It's now time for Mike McDaniel to back that up.
Yeah, I think I would pretty much concur with all of that. That's kind of the run game. I think the disappointing thing for me with McDaniel, and pro tip by the way, if you're watching any of Mike McDaniel's interviews, if you play them on YouTube at 1.25 speed, they're a lot easier to follow. Rather than sitting there waiting for him to make. But I like McDaniel. I think he's quirky. I think he's cool. I think he's something a bit different. I like that he is for the players. However, his name was made on the running game. His innovative, mad scientist kind of reputation that he got was built on the running game in San Francisco, and that's what's been the biggest disappointment for me, is especially sort of, obviously last year, that can he come up with those adjustments? Can he come up with those changes to the plays quick enough during games? Or it feels like he's surprisingly only ever got a plan A. And then when he's like, well, I don't really know, it'd be hard to do that. So, like you said, I'll abandon the run game rather than do something different with the run game, which seems totally counter-argumentative to what he came for.
Running the same plays on third and short again. Like the Alec Ingold one where he ran like 4 times. And and teams knew Alec Ingold was going to run it. It's just, you have to be, he's so predictable. In key moments. That's
but like I say, that's a surprise given the reputation that he's got. Now, I don't know whether it's pressure in the league, as being the head coach and everything else like that. I noted that during the off season we promoted Chandler Henley to the run game coordinator, who I think he's worked with for a while, and Bobby Slowick is the pass game coordinator. 2 different people that they brought in to kind of progress with that while keeping McDaniel on play calling duties. So maybe that will give him the freedom to focus on other things, not do so many of the procrastination for timeouts or procrastination for challenges or those sorts of things that, again, seem like small things, but they add up and they cost us in some of the games. And I think, maybe if that takes some of the pressure off him or whatever it is in terms of kind of moving those things around, or it's a second sounding board for him to kind of have the ideas with, maybe this will kind of unlock him a little bit and he won't get quite so focused on those things, because somebody's going to say, let's not use Alec Ingold again, or let's not do another screen pass down to Malik Washington or to Devon Achin or whatever, and those sorts of things. But that's kind of my hope for it. So I think he is in the hot seat, and I think it's more like what Sam says. I don't think it's so much about the wins. It's about, do we see a progression in the team in the way that we play? Do we see a progression in the run game? Do we see the O-line and the people that he's brought in be effective? James Daniels should be an effective guard for the run game. Savonaya should be very good. He's been, again, according to training camp, manhandling Zach Sealer around, which obviously we were saying how much we love Zach Sealer. So if he's doing those things and he's moving Zach Sealer out of the way, you got to think, well, he's going to be doing that to quite a few, defensive tackles in the league, and he hopefully making those spaces. The blockers with Akine and others in terms of, that outside run game and affecting that. We've got the backs.
Really
We've got the
run
backs.
game as well. Yeah, like that, and I think if Austin Jackson's healthy, like again, it all went to pot when he was injured last year. And that's he is so key for the run game as well. Because the amount of times I'll kick it out right and use him, that's I think it's the offensive line on paper. You've got so many athletes at quickness getting there in the run game, and the way the scheme works. And it is about athleticism. It's just James Daniels is coming off an injury, Austin Jackson's coming off an injury. Like that's the. I feel like I actually am kind of confident about the run game if they still stay healthy. It's just if they stay healthy.
Ollie Gordon as well. Ollie Gordon.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he could be. He's my breakout star this year. I think short yardage situations. Sort of that power back that we've kind of been missing for a while, as well as if you've got him, I feel like you've got Achan, who's the speedster, you've got Ollie Gordon, who can be the power back. Insane statistics a couple of years ago, not so good last year, but insane statistics a couple of years ago from him. And then you've got Jalen Wright, who's probably somewhere in the middle, and then you've got Mattison, who's obviously kind of an experienced player at that role. So I look at it and I think that should be better, and that should be what probably, if we get it right, will keep McDaniel away from the hot seat. But he's got to prove that he can come up with something different. He did it in 2023 when we had the game against the Broncos and nobody could live with us and everybody started copying us. Well, that's great, but you can't sit on your laurels. What's next? You've got to keep evolving.
We were waiting last year when will something new happen, and nothing happened. And that's the if there's nothing new in week one, I think it probably is time to panic. If we're being honest,
we've got 5 running backs on the roster, and we're giving it to Alec Ingold on 3rd and 1. We're going to be like,
yeah.
Well, speaking of which, let's head to our win-loss tie section. So, as I said before, we predicted 12-5 last year. The team went 8-9. And for those who don't know the format right now, each fan who comes on predicts their team's record by going through each game and answering with a win-loss tie answer. Now, as there's 3 of us, we will alternate between the 3 of us from weeks 1 all the way to week 18. So starting off with Sam in week 1, you mentioned the Colts game. We're on the road to Lucas Oil Stadium. Sam, win, lose, or tie?
I think it's a win. Dolphins normally start the season well, and 2 in a dome. I feel like that's where he can shine as well. So yeah, I think the Dolphins win that game.
Yeah, I mean, we think our season's going in with a lot of uncertainty. The Colts season is even more uncertain, and I feel a lot for this team. That I don't know what the hell they're doing a quarterback. I think Daniel Jones will play in this game. I think if it was in week 10 or week 11, you may think, oh, maybe they'll get Richardson back. But I think in week 1, Daniel Jones would certainly, for me, be the guy they're playing against us, which would give me a lot of confidence to win that game, if I'm honest. Mark, your first time predicting in this episode, New England Patriots, the home opener for the Dolphins in 2025. Win, lose, or tie?
Win. Got to be a win. That's the statement in the AFC East. We go out, and I'm really hoping a really good performance. I see the Patriots as being better than last year. I think they are better they're a better team than they were last year. I think they'll run us a lot closer.
The test is. You mentioned there the test because of how Mike Vrabel has handed it to the Dolphins, both with McDaniel and Flores.
Yep.
Vrabel's teams completely dominated the Dolphins. It just so that's if you can just if it does last, this McDaniel versus Vrabel battle in division is going to be fascinating because Mike Vrabel has had the Dolphins number, so it is a huge game, that one.
And like you say, and but two very, very different styles. So we've traditionally struggled against the let's say more aggressive, more defensive, more in your face teams, which obviously Vrabel's teams tend to be. So what we were saying about McDaniel, can McDaniel come up with something different to get that win? But I think he will.
Well, you mentioned having our number available. I mean, Tua had the Patriots number, and he's yet to lose as a Dolphin to the Patriots. So I think it gives you confidence, especially at home. I think also playing them later on in the year when it's going to be a lot colder. I think that could prove more. That could prove be the game than maybe then his record ends. But I think week 2 in the sun against a team that is I think going to be much better under Vrabel. I'm a big fan of Vrabel as a coach. But a week 2
Drake May as well.
Yeah, Drake May had a year, but more tape on him this year, and I think they'll still be adjusting to a new playbook. So I think good time to play them. But I do worry more about the game in Foxborough. Next up is me. Week 3 is a road game against the Buffalo Bills. Now, this is in Miami. Early on in the year, I'd be a bit more confident because we saw what happened in week 3 back in 2022. Albeit with a better team than what we got now, but I do think we'll lose here. I do think we'll go 2-1 because I just think the Buffalo Bills are, let's be honest, way ahead of us in terms of their sort of team and where they are. They're looking to reach the Super Bowl. We're looking just to win a playoff game at the most, even just make the playoffs. I think at this point. So
isn't this game the new uniform game, the rivalry uniform game? Yeah, that comes out in August.
Yeah, I
28. I think I saw earlier 28.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw a lot of teams today announcing their videos, and it's all the same, literally the all same video. It was like some video, it was like either in water or in sand for the Cardinals, for example, all had very similar videos. But I think the rumors are it's going to be navy blue, which would be a bit like one of the old school jerseys back in the day when Reno was there. From what I've seen rumors of it being, it looks quite nice. I'm not going to lie.
I'd take that. I'd take that a navy jersey with a bit of orange and aqua or orange and white on it.
Yeah, it's a bit like the NBA City jerseys. So the ones that are like done to and in baseball as well. It's the same thing. They're jerseys based on the city, and I think every 4 years I think the team's going to get a new one. So the last 4 years is this uniform, but it'll be based on the area.
Has to be said. I wouldn't object if we did the old neon Miami Vice that everybody talks about with the black with the pink and
the Heat and the Marlins have both done it. So
I wouldn't mind that. I'd quite like that. That would be hanging up here the next time we do it if that was the case. But we'll see. It'd be nice to have something new though and different for a change.
Yeah. I do think our jerseys can be guilty of being a bit bland at times, some of it, especially the new kind of style jerseys. But I think that I don't know why we haven't got more orange jerseys. Considering orange is in the logo, I'm surprised you haven't got more than just the occasion one we had a few years ago in 2015, 2016. I think you've got the jersey, Sam. If I'm right in saying that.
Yeah, I got a Jarvis Landry one. Only ever wore it once. That game against the Bengals on Thursday Night Football. That's the only time I ever wore it, which is crazy.
Shame. Week 4, we're back at home, Sam, and we're taking on the New York Jets.
It's a win, especially at home, prime time. Little bit worried. It's a Monday Night Football game. It's another big. Having the Vrabel test, then having 2 straight primetime games again from McDaniel. These are the games. It's a bit of an interesting start to the season there. But again, I think the Dolphins are better than the Jets. I really like Aaron Glenn. I actually really like Justin Fields. He'll be healthy by then as well. But I just feel like it's in your own turf. It's early in the season where you start well. I feel like this is the game the Dolphins normally win. But I wouldn't be surprised to see it closer than people think.
Okay, so then week 5, Mark, is a road game against the Carolina Panthers.
If we don't win that, there's something very, very, very wrong. I mean, it's the Panthers, but I mean, like, seriously, like, come on. Like, it's the Panthers are going to be better than they have been over the past few years. But
Bryce
even
Young
so,
was really good last year. Like the second half
Yeah.
of last year, Bryce Young was really good.
the thing is, I mean, and I agree, but the thing is, like they've not got a lot around here. A bit like the Colts.
Their defense
kind of.
sucks.
They've not got
Their defense is terrible.
Yeah, they've not got the pieces everywhere. So, I think they're probably a team that maybe in a couple of years will probably be very, very good in terms of, as you say, like maybe they'll build those things. But it's got to be a win for me.
Okay, so week 6 is back with me, and it's a home game against the Chargers. I think I'm going to go for a loss again. I think a kind of team that is so good to get, or their main strength is the run game, and that's Harbaugh's sort of run first approach. And I think, we were 21st against the run last year, so we weren't exactly great against that. And maybe with Phillips back, maybe with not Wilkins, Bradley Chubb back, and maybe if we do get Wilkins, but maybe as well, if that team can stay healthy on the defensive front, maybe you could stop the run a bit more. But I think even with that, you've got Herbert thrown to McConkey, and it's the Chargers in week 6, not the Chargers in the playoffs. So I think, in that sense, I think it will be our second loss, moving to 4-2. Week 7 is back with you, Sam, and we take a road game, the first of 2 back-to-back road games. But this one's in Cleveland against the Browns.
I mean, just if it's Joe Flacco, I don't know. If it's a rookie, I'd pick the Dolphins easy. Yeah, any day of the week here. It does depend who starts a quarterback. I'm gonna go for the Dolphins here. Another thing is it's not in December. If it's Cleveland in December, then maybe I feel differently. But just because of the weather and everything. But no, and they admittedly they're not great, but those kind of games that may be a little bit of a trip up. But I'm going to pick the Dolphins to win it because I feel like everything is in their favour there, I think.
Okay, so then week 8 is back with you, Mark, and it's a road game against
Dolphins. I'll be honest, I've struggled with this one. Like I feel that the Falcons are a bit like us. They're a bit kind of possibly a little bit of a rebuild. They've got some weapons. They've got some not so good elements. So I struggled a little bit. I think we'll lose to the Browns because it's my birthday weekend, so we invariably lose. So I'm going to say a bounce back win.
Okay, so then week 9 is against the Baltimore Ravens at home. Now, I actually did give my prediction for this game in our Ravens season preview with Shane Harris from third and long. And I kind of want to leave that surprise to you guys listening. You can have a look in that afterwards and see what I predicted. So I'm going to hand this over back to Sam. Baltimore Ravens at home, win, lose, or tie?
Lose. I think the Ravens are the second best team in the league behind the Eagles. I think they're that good. Lamar Jackson's probably the best quarterback in the league. He's very hard to stop. Again, the last 2 years, I think he's been the best quarterback the last 2 years. And again, it's prime time, Thursday night, short week. That just screams loss for the Dolphins, especially against this Ravens team.
Okay, well, back with me for week 10. We've got a home game against the Buffalo Bills. Do I go for a win here? I've not gone for a win yet, actually, saying this, but I feel like if this is the game in week 18 or in the playoffs, I would say no doubt the Bills win. But I think even the best teams have these off games. You think about the Patriots for some of the years struggled in Miami, and when they were winning Super Bowls, and the Bills haven't won one yet, but they'll be a contender. I just think these teams that are good, they have these little random losses in the random point in the year, midway through the season. But I think we could win this. I think we could have Josh Allen on an off day. I can just picture in my head. This game's on at 1 p.m, so it's going to be most likely, I think Coney are saying the broadcast is going to be on CBS, so that will be most likely. Is it Kevin Hartland? I can't think who the one is that we always seem to win when he commentates on
it. Kevin Hartland. Yeah. If this is a Nunts and Romo game, you're sweating a little bit.
But I just have this image in my head of the Bills being 8-1, 7-2, and everyone's saying the Bills are going to win. There's that classic meme you get when the whole panel will say the one team, and then the logo comes up, and then they end up losing. I got this image in my head of that happening. I got this image of Zach Sealer and a fit again Bradley Chubb and Jaden Phillips just having a field day against Allen. Maybe Allen having an off day. So yeah, I'm going to say a win, I'm going for a shock win against Buffalo Bills.
Nice.
So yeah, I think that could be one of the shocks of the season. Now week 11. Now should I say ole for this one as we take on the Washington Commanders in Madrid. Now, first of all, before we get onto the game itself and our predictions, are any of you going to the game?
Not yet. Maybe,
No.
but not yet.
Yeah, same for me. I just couldn't justify paying those costs at the moment. I think later on down the line, costs being reduced a little bit later on down the line, and I am hoping to get media. Now, I don't want to assume it because it's the first year in Madrid and it's going to be very in demand. So I'm hoping to get there in some way, either as a fan or in the media. But either way, I'll be watching at home if not. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game. Mark, win, lose, or tie?
If you need anyone to carry suitcases, Andy, if you do get them for media, let me know. I'll be more than happy to oblige. Yeah, I mean, I've got a win, by the way, against the Bills, same as you had, for pretty much exactly the same reasons. So I think, but sadly, the high of beating the Bills, we won't be able to sustain it, and I think we'll unfortunately lose in Madrid. I don't think we travel particularly well to these the European games. I think we'll hopefully perhaps handle the weather, which should be much nicer than what Washington's used to at that time of year. You'd think we'd handle it a little bit better, but I think the Commanders are going to be pretty good next year. I've got kind of, I think they're going to be a lot. Well, I mean, they did do too bad last year, but I think they're going to be pretty good another year for Jaden Daniels. I think he's got a few more weapons around him. So I unfortunately lost for being that game, sadly.
Shootout. That's what it'll be.
Yeah.
Two very, very high-powered offenses. Theoretically, two dodgy back ends on defense. Like that just screams shootout.
I think as well, if I do go to the game, for example, with my record at Dolphins games, 0-7.
Oh, same, Andy.
Yeah,
same.
you can't go, Andy. You're not allowed.
I mean, yeah, you've been to more than me, but even then, just curse. That Jags game, recent memory, the one in London, that was horrendous.
Yeah, that's the only one I've ever been to, Sam. So that's the only one I've been to.
So, I guess we've all been. None of us have seen the Dolphins win in person. There's not a single one in this room in this recording that's been. That is shocking, and that's probably why we've got the longest playoff drought, playoff win drought. At some point the curse will break. But then I don't know whether you saw online there was a guy who I want to say he's like 0-17 at Dolphins games. I don't know whether you've seen that. I think when he lost to the Bills last season. I think or was it the Bills or we played someone last year. Where it was confirmed that he'd gone 0-17 at Dolphins games. That is, I think my record's bad. That's even worse.
It's just an entire lost season, that isn't it? Worth of games.
Cleveland Browns 2017 or 2016. Was it 2017 or 2016? Their 0-16 season. What year was that? Was that 2017? I think it was, wasn't it?
Browns 2016, 17. Yeah. 2017. 16. It was 0-16. They were 1-15 the next year, I think. Or either way, either way, it was they were two. One win in 2 years or something like that. It was crazy. Yeah.
I really enjoyed tormenting the guys at work during those 2 seasons.
Are they Browns fans as well? Yeah. Oh god, that must have been a horrible time.
I mean, he's generally never had any good times, so he's been a bit like us.
It's a good point. Yeah, he's not had anything to shout about in the last 50 years. Week 12 is a bye week after Spain, so week 13 is going to be a game against the New Orleans Saints. Now, this is actually back to me, and I think we'll win this game. I think this probably is our easiest game on paper. I think the Saints will be one of the worst teams in the league, maybe the worst team in the league, and I just think that fresh off a bye week, I think we'll get back to winning ways. We're at home as well. We're not playing in the Superdome, which it can be allowed, and daunting affair, even if they are a bad team. So, at home against the Saints, I'm going for a win. Sam, week 14, we're on the road to the New York Jets.
New York in December is slightly worrying, so I am kind of thinking loss, especially like the Dolphins have basically won for fun against the Jets and the Patriots recently. I don't think that's going to be the same anymore because obviously new regimes for both of them. I mean, you'd like to think that they've got a new GM and everything as well. Yeah, and he's come from a good organisation. In Denver, you'd like to think that the Jets probably are at least on an upturn. I feel like at the end of the year, that's probably where they'll feel a bit friskier more than at the start of the year. So yeah, I'm going to put us down for a loss purely just because I feel like that's the kind of game that I think we'll probably go 1-1 with every team in the division. Really,
Okay.
if I was to have a guess.
Then week 15 is a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. Mark, win, lose, or tie.
For third loss in 4 games for me, I'm afraid. Pretty much the same reasons as the Jets. We'll just be frozen solid by this point. At that point in December. No, they're gonna.
It's a primetime game as well. It's Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
Like that cold at night in Pittsburgh. Oh no,
they'll be stiffer than the steel bars in Sheffield, in Pittsburgh. I feel at that point. So yeah, lost for me there. I'm afraid. Although hopefully Pittsburgh won't be wearing their god awful new throwback jerseys.
Well, back with me in week 16. My final prediction, and it's once again a loss. We're taking on at home the Cincinnati Bengals. I just think that the Bengals in week 16 compared to the Bengals in week 3 is just a horrible prospect. They'll most likely be on a great run at this point. Now, the defense of theirs gives me hope that we can cause some problems. I just think that offense, trio they got of Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. I just think that is far too much of a deadly offense to see us winning that game. So yeah, I'm going to go for a loss on that one. Back to week 17, your final prediction, Sam. Our final home game of the regular season as we host Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I think we'll stop the losing streak here. I feel like this is it's at home. It's a win. It's probably personally I think it's probably the last game we win of the season, and then we'll see what happens because that Patriots game coming up does worry me a little bit. And yeah, I think we'll win it. I really like the Bucks, but you just feel like you probably you'd like to think would win their last home game of the season, and probably when at their best, 2 teams that are very similar, and then you'd like to think that you could win with the home advantage there.
So then finally, week 18 is a road game. We mentioned it earlier, Mark. It is a road game against the New England Patriots.
So I think we'll be 10-6 at this point. So I think hopefully that will mean we've got a playoff berth secured. So I'm going for a loss because I think we're going to be securing the playoffs, and therefore we will rest quite a few players with the aim of finally getting our first playoff victory at some point. And it's New England in the cold as well. So
I mentioned it earlier. I honestly think this game could be a win and get a wild card game.
It could.
I think for both teams, as in I think for New England too. I think it could be because they obviously have a much easier schedule than Miami do, for example.
If there's something riding on it, I'm not going to change my mind. We're still going to lose.
I have the exact same thought as you. Exactly the same. But yeah, I think this New England game, you've got. I won't be surprised to see 2 Sunday night games in 3 weeks because the Bengals games are Sunday night football, and if the Bengals are half decent, they're probably not going to flex that, even if the Dolphins are bad. And then we'll see what happens with the Patriots one. So you might even get 2 Sunday night games in 3 weeks there.
So that means that at the end of the season, we've gone for a 9-8 record, which could get us into the playoffs. I know, Mark, you had 10-6, maybe 11-6, but I just thought, 9-8, you could sneak in with that record. Now, last year, we didn't get in with 8-9. We wouldn't have gotten in anyway with 9-8, because the Broncos did win. But you never know how the leagues go. Sometimes, there's years before where the Patriots had 11 wins and didn't make the playoffs, but there's some years where we had 10 wins and didn't make the playoffs as well. But then there's other years where you can get 8-9 wins and sneak in as a 7th seed. So
Didn't we have 11? Didn't we have 11 wins in one of the Flores years and
Yeah.
still didn't get in?
11 wins in 2020, and we didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, so
And then we had 9 and 8 and made the playoffs with McDaniel. It was 10 wins. We had the
Yeah.
same win but made the playoffs with McDaniel. Yeah, I think that would be. I think personally that wouldn't be enough to make it in. I think you need 10 wins in that AFC to get in because there's so many strong teams. Do any of you see us making the playoffs with that 9 and 8 record?
It depends on the head-to-head with the team. Like, so, say the teams you think are probably going to be in the wild card race: Bengals, Steelers, Chargers. It depends on the head-to-head with those teams. I think, rather than. And we said we were going to lose all 3 of those games, so I'd probably say likely not. But
yeah.
Okay, so let's head on to our final segment, our Fan Asks Fan. So in the final segment, a new section to this year's season previews. Each fan who comes on asks the next guest a question, whilst also answering a question from the previous guest. Now, our last guest was Tom Morton and the New York Giants. Now, this time, I've had the luxury of being able to answer it myself because I've had time to prepare for it, unlike any other guest. So Tom did ask us to ask in this episode which first-round pick, or maybe it was his draft note. He asked us which pick would be the most disappointing from this year's draft. Now, my answer is simple. It's Sherman Stewart for the Bengals. A top-round pick. I think he was 17th overall. There's rumours that he doesn't want to play. The interview we had
if he plays.
The draft interview was really damning. I thought it was really a bad look for him in the draft. He didn't say much. He seemed like he was annoyed by being picked by the Bengals. And everything that's followed since, I can see him either not playing or with all that build-up, all the talk he's made and wanting to be paid, I can see him just being a massive flop. So
to be fair, what I was going to say, what he says, like it's the fact that for the contract they've offered him, it's different to what they've done to the previous first-round picks. So from his from his point, the last couple of first-round picks, they've given him, they've given up the the guarantees over, and then he hasn't got this money. You can see why he is threatening to not play, because he's not got what the last 2 first-round picks have got.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit like the second rounders, isn't it? With
exactly.
Sam and everything, why they've held it out. If everyone before you's been given a guaranteed contract, you're going to say, "Well, I want it. I want a guaranteed contract." At some point, someone's going to have to say, "No, that's enough now." But when you're a relatively high pick that we moved up to get, I mean, why wouldn't you say?
I think it's a wording in the contracts compared to for like injury guarantee or something like that. They've changed the wording in the way they do the contracts. And so that he's not getting what previous first round picks from the Bengals have got in terms of that wording. So I think it's mad how a couple of words in a contract can completely have this whole situation, isn't it? But it's crazy.
In my mind, I'm thinking, if I was a professional, like say if I was in college, I finally got my chance of playing in the NFL, my dream would come true. The last thing I think about would be money. They still get a decent amount of wages as a rookie, even what the base is. And I just think that if your first thing you're thinking about in your NFL, the time in the NFL is the money aspect, then that's not a good look for your career, because we saw the best player of all time, certainly best quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, constantly have lesser deals because he wanted to build a team around him. Even players came in on short contracts, cheap contracts. They want to play with him, and that's what it should be. You should want to play for a team. You should want to be professional. I get it if you're like a season pro and you want that sort of danger money and you want that money that'll set you up for life. I kind of get that. But if you're a rookie who's never played an NFL snap, you shouldn't be sitting here and saying, "I want this money." It's almost like what's the word? It's almost like you're privileged. You're expecting everything to be right. And,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you. A lot of people who first rounds are busts, and there's no guarantee that he's going to be good. So, I think personally, it's awfully privileged. It's
it's him. I wouldn't be. I can see why he's annoyed, but again, like what opportunity you've got in front of you. So I feel like it probably has been a little bit ungrateful in that aspect, but also it shows where the Bengals are at, because obviously they've got the same thing over guaranteed money with Trey Hendrickson as well. The way are the Bengals going to have a pass rush when we play in week 17 or we get week 16? because right now their two pass rushers are threatening not to play, and obviously the Bengals have been a historically cheap organisation, so it is actually fascinating seeing how they act. Bear in mind, most of their cap is spent on 3 players in Burrow, Chase, and Higgins.
I mean, yeah, that is the danger of this NIL stuff in college. It's just meant that players now are just wanting money and.
Well, they used to it, aren't they? They used to these big paydays and going, oh well, I'm used to having this. So yeah, like you say, I agree. You know, on one hand, you know, you're gonna want what everybody else gets, but on the other hand, like I say, it's this playing in the NFL. You know, they say you could be world famous for the rest of your life, or you can be remembered as that was the guy that got picked in the first round and is another first round bust. You know, what would you rather do? You know, and he had great hype going into the draft as well. Like, you know, they were, you know, he was like, you know, freakishly athletic and everything else like that. You know, and then it's kind of, you know, it doesn't take long to get bombed out and forgotten about in the NFL. So you have to be careful.
Right, it's now your turn to ask our next guest a question. Now, it can be either one of you. I'll let you decide amongst yourselves who wants to ask our next team a question. Who wants to go for it?
I'll let Mark do it. I can't think of anything.
Okay, so my question will be who will be the outstanding comeback player of the season this year? Who's going to be was out of the league last year or whatever on you know, injured reserve or anything else like that? You know, there's obviously quite a few. I know who my tip will be. It was one of my first picks in my fantasy leagues this year. But yeah, who do people think will be the comeback player this year?
There we are. You'll find out in the next episode. First of all, which team it's going to be, but also what their answer, our guest, is to that question. So there we are. That is the end of the episode. First of all, thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mark, for coming on today.
Welcome. You're welcome.
It's always a pleasure, mate.
Indeed.
Likewise. And yeah, this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, our 2025 Miami Dolphins season preview. I have been, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, with our guest today, as well as me, fellow Dolphins fans, Sam Moores and Mark Bradley. I will see you guys for our next team season preview. See you then.